Hello, Nick Rehmani here from Morgantown, West Virginia. I just wanted to give you a few tips how to get started on what to do if you're a homeowner or if you're a small town landlord that can't afford to get an electrician. I'm a 20+ year electrician, and electricians do cost anywhere between $75 to $100 an hour per electrician. That's per person. So anyways, I wanted to show you how you can identify different wires, the different basic wires for your household, and we'll get into the bigger gauge in another video, but I just want to give you the basics right now. First thing I'm going to get started, I'm going to say if you are above your head, you're better off calling an electrician. But I'm just going to give you a few tips on how you can handle things on your own if you pay attention. Okay, the first thing you have to do before you work on any circuits, make sure that your power is off at your breaker box. Okay, so just make sure your power is off. Safety first, very important. That could save a lot of frustrations, save a lot of injury and possibly death. So pay attention. Anyway, the first tool you really need to have in your arsenal if you're going to do electrical work is a good set of Lineman's pliers. This is a pretty inexpensive one. It's not very expensive. That can go as high as $100, but you can find one of these at Lowe's for probably about 20, 25 bucks. And make sure when you put it in your hand, it feels pretty sturdy and nice, and that way it gives you a lot of leverage whenever you're working on circuits, okay? So just make sure you get a decent pair. Don't get a cheapy pair that feels like flimsy thing, and because they suck. So just get a decent one. The second tool is called a stripper. And no, I'm not talking about a stripper pole. One of those strip pole. It's a stripper right here, okay? So what you got right here, you got these two holes right here. There's two larger holes, and that's to strip the outer layer of the wire. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. That's to strip the outer layer of the wire. There's two layers. There's one outer layer and there's one inner layer. So that's what to do with that, okay? And then there's a couple little holes at the bottom right there below that. So those are to strip the inner layer of the wire. So that way you can have whatever you need as far as if you want to make a connection or splice or whatever you want to do. So that's a stripper. Must have, must have, must have, must have. Avoid a lot of frustration if you have one of these. Another tool is a knife. That's just a common thing. Even a carpenter should have one. Everybody should have one. A homeowner should have one. It's a good tool to have just overall. The next tool is called a needle nose plier. These things will save you a lot of frustrations as well. You can get into some tight places. They make them in all sizes. They make them longer. They can make them shorter. I wouldn't go any shorter than this, because then you might as well just throw it away in the garbage. Okay, so you need to get one of these. And also, same thing, make sure you get a decent one, and you can feel it in your hand when you try it out, the difference between the good ones and the cheap ones, because they suck if you get a bad one. Now this is a 11-in-1 screwdriver. You need to have one of these. This will replace about a dozen screwdrivers, and it'll save you a lot of frustration and room. So make sure you have one of these in your arsenal as well. This right here, this is called a sniffer. I don't know what they call it, but us electricians, we call this a sniffer. So what you do with that, before you even touch any circuit, you put that in the circuit and it'll go beep, 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 beep. It'll keep going like that, okay? So you must have one of these just to make sure, even though you think you shut the breaker off, and even though you're pretty certain that you shut the breaker off to that particular circuit, you could have made a mistake and not paid attention. Everybody does it, we're all humans. So just make sure you have one of these, and it'll avoid you a lot of injuries, frustration, and possibly death. So that could save your life right here. So make sure you have one of these, so that way you can detect before you even put your fingers in there. Make sure you put that in there, and it'll start beeping relentlessly, let you know that the circuit is hot, okay? Or if there's possibly another backfeed from somewhere else. So just make sure you have one of these. And this is a multimeter. okay? I don't think you'll need that necessarily, but it's good to have just in case. You can get them for $20, $25. They're pretty cheap to have. Very good tool to have, okay? So another thing you should have in your arsenal is these wire nuts. Red wire nuts is the best overall wire nuts, the red ones, okay? They make yellow ones, they make orange ones, but the red ones are the best as far as your basic usage because it'll go on a smaller, it'll go on a bigger. This is the best, the red ones, by far the best, and it'll avoid you a lot of frustrations. A lot of electricians don't like these. These are called inserts. They have 3 holes, some of them have 4 holes, and if you look, they're clear right there, and I'll tell you why it's clear at the bottom right here, okay? So when you strip your wire, instead of twisting it, making a splice and put a wire nut on it, this is the all-in-one. You can just slide the wire in. You got to make sure the wire goes all the way to the bottom, and you can see the wire all the way to the bottom so he makes a good connection. Once he goes in, it's hard to get out. Now, a lot of electricians, old school electricians, don't like these. I like them. They're pretty nice because they twist around, around the wire and everything, and you could put several wires in there instead of having a wire nut. And you can take it out. It's very difficult, but you can slide it in and it just grabs it. And I like these. And at the same time, it's used as a wire nut. Make sure you get a reputable brand. Ideal brand is usually the one that I prefer because that's usually one of the best that there is. Because if you get any cheaper brand, they tend to come out, and you don't want that to happen in your electrical box. Okay, so that's you should have like a box of these in your little box at home, or if you're a small time landlord, so that way you have it. The next thing you should always have: black electrical tape. Always have one of these. That's the basic. That's what you need, and everybody should have one of these. Okay, just always make sure you have a supply of these. If you have to buy a roll, and they don't go bad, they don't expire or anything like that. So they're nice to have. Okay, so those are the basic tools that you need if you're gonna work on electric, and if you're gonna be efficient about it. Okay, so don't skimp on that, because if you do, that's when people get hurt. All right. So now, part 2. We're going to get into the different types of basic wire that you have, okay? We're going to start with the 14 gauge wire right here. It's commonly white, okay? For the last 25, 30 years, they're all color-coded. They're called 14 gauge wire. The maximum rating, amp rating for this is 15 amps. So if you have a 20 amp breaker and you have 14 gauge wire, you will catch on fire, because what happens is your breaker will never trip for overload, and what it does, it uses the wire as a fuse. Okay, and so what happens in turn, the wire gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Eventually it'll burn at high temperatures, and they're usually in your rafters where the wood's dry, and it'll spark the wood on fire, and that's how a lot of these house electrical fire happen, because somebody got too lazy and put a 20 amp breaker into a 15 amp wire. So the maximum rating for 14 gauge wire is 15 amps. Okay, the next wire is a 12 gauge wire. Okay, the first one was a 14-2. This is 12-2. Okay, so this one is colored yellow. Okay, and it's got the they call them 12-2, 14-2 because it's got 2 conductors. They don't consider the ground as a conductor, because the ground, that's just what it is. It's a ground. See right here, it's got 2 conductors. It's got a black one and it's got a white one. The white one's a neutral and the black one's a hot. The white one completes the circuit. That's what it does. It completes the circuit. And the ground is just the ground. In case something happens, it just alleviates it to the ground. All right. So this wire, 12 gauge wire, is rated at 20 amps max. Okay. This is the wire that I like to personally use when I rewire houses. It's the best overall. If you put all 20 amp breakers in your breaker box and you use 12 gauge wire, no mistakes can be made. You don't have to do load calculations or anything. Just use 12 gauge wire. So this is what 12 gauge wire looks like, okay? So that's 12-2. Now, you have this wire, which is a 10 gauge wire. Very rarely you're gonna have a 30 amp single pole on a 120 volt circuit on a 10 gauge. It's very rare. It does happen, but it's very rare. So I'm not gonna really talk about it. So this is 10-2, same as the other one. See, it's got the same thing going on, black, white, you know. But in this situation, these are used for 240 volts, mostly for your dryers, some dryers, because some dryers do require a 10-3 wire, but some dryers will require 10-2 wire, which is 2 conductors and a ground, okay? And the maximum rating for that is 30 amps, and it's usually for dryers, hot water tanks, things like that. Anything that's got 240 volts, and it takes a double pole breaker. Very rarely that you will have a 30 amp single pole, but I'm just going to talk about the double pole. So that's what these are for, okay? So just for the sake of this demonstration, I used a 14. It was cheaper to get it. This is called a 14-3. I'm trying to get here. See how it is? It's got a black one, a white one, and a red one, okay? And that's used for different applications, which we will cover in other videos. Today, I just wanted to cover your basic wire that you have in your house and how you can tell the difference between them and what their amp rating is for that, okay? So let's recap. So the 14 gauge wire is rated at maximum 15 amps, okay? So the 12 gauge wire is rated at maximum 20 amps, okay? The 10 gauge wire, which is orange, I forgot to tell you, it's orange, and it's rated at 30 amp max, okay? And down the road a little bit, when I make some more videos, I will show you all the other bigger wire and the different applications that it applies to. If you like this video, I would appreciate if you just give me a like, and if you would subscribe to my channel. I will be adding some more videos of some more electrical tips for your house, or if you're a landlord, for your properties. The safe way. There's no other way but the safe way. And if you have any questions on any particular thing, just put it in the comment below, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions that you have. I appreciate it. And if you'd like to get some more money-making resources, if you can go to my website below, and it'll give you all the information that you need to have. Until the next video, stay healthy, my friend.